Now we're ready to start building out our actual campaigns. Before we click new campaign, we have to first decide how we want our campaigns to be structured within our ad account. There are a lot of different ways to structure your ad account based on campaigns, ad groups, keywords, etc. So I'm going to try to keep it simple. How you're going to break out your campaigns, since we work with service businesses, is generally either by location or by service. To give you a couple of examples, this might be you might have campaigns that target all the same locations, but if you offer 5 different services, you have 5 different campaigns, each campaign dedicated to one service. All your ad groups and keywords are relevant to that one service within that campaign. And as I said, all your 5 campaigns would target one location. Or you can break it out by location. Maybe you offer your services within 10 different locations and you have 3 different services. So you have 10 campaigns, each one based on a location, and then your ad groups are broken out by your services. What's going to work best for you really depends on your situation. To give you a couple of examples, you could be a exterior remodeler, roofing, siding, windows, gutters, etc. And you may have a service area of 50 miles around where you're based out of. So for that, it may make way more sense for you to have a single location target within all your campaigns and just have a campaign dedicated to each individual service. And you could break that out from roofing campaign, roof repair campaign, so on and so forth. Now, within the same industry, we worked with someone who lived and serviced a vacation area. So a lot of people had winter homes in the warmer part of the US. And so let's say that this person was based in Florida. They weren't based in Florida, but let's say they were in Florida. They're in a vacation area. So the people that actually own most of these homes aren't there during the warm months. They're just there during the winter. So when people are actually trying to get work done on their homes there, it's generally when they're not there. So they're all over the US. So it made sense for him to break out campaigns based on people who are currently in his area, that are searching in his area for services, and people that are outside of his area in different states or different part of the state that are searching for services within his area. Because there's going to be very few people who are targeting people who are, let's say, in Maine that are searching for a roofing company in Florida, which allowed him to have much lower CPCs or cost per clicks for those specific areas. Another example may be if you are an injury attorney, you may have campaigns broken out by each individual practice area. So you might have your car accidents, your birth injuries, your motorcycle accidents, your pedestrian accidents, wrongful death, so on and so forth, slip and fall, etc. Broken out by individual campaigns. Now, if your ad account is large enough, you might go with both. If you have let's say you have 3 offices or 3 locations, you might have a service plus location. So you might have service 1, location 1 as a campaign, service 1, location 2, service 2, location 1, so on and so forth. Now, I wouldn't overthink it. If based on any of the examples that I gave, one of them stuck in your head, it was like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. Just go with that one, because you can always change it later on. You can always run tests against a different variation of that campaign through using things like drafts and experiments later on to figure out if a different structure works for you. So I wouldn't overthink it. For this example that we're setting up this account for, we're able to target all of the state of Massachusetts. And there's pretty much just one service of people looking for a mobile bartender, even though we have various events such as like parties or weddings and whatnot. There's not enough keywords for those to really dedicate an individual campaign for that. So I believe it's going to make most sense to split this out by locations. We'll have different campaigns for locations. How we're going to have that could just be maybe counties. We could split it up by counties. We could split it up by cities. I'll figure that out as we're kind of going along as to how I want to break that out. Again, everything should be tested. So however you had it set up now, you should always be testing against a different setup to see if that would work better. So you don't have to strain yourself trying to think of the perfect campaign structure. So we've decided that we're going to break this out by locations. Rather than building out our campaigns within Google Ads itself, we're going to use the Ads Editor. This is a free software that you can download right from Google. If you just Google download Google Ads Editor, you'll be able to find it. The reason why we're going to be using the Ads Editor is that it is much faster for us to be able to go in and create our campaigns, copy and paste, find and replace, all this kind of stuff. It's way faster than doing it within the actual Google Ads interface. So if we download Google Ads, add our account, all we have to do is we'll see a screen that says add, we'll add an account, we'll have to log into Google Ads again, we'll get a code, copy and paste that code. The reason why I'm not showing this on screen is that it would show all the other accounts that we have. And then once you put in that code, you're gonna get asked, do you want to download all campaigns or just one campaign? Since this is a fresh account, just click all campaigns and then it'll download nothing because there's nothing to download. But then we'll actually have the account within the Ads Editor and it will look like this. So once we have that actually all imported and set up, we're going to create our first campaign. So we're going to make sure we're creating a search campaign. And the first thing we're going to do is name this campaign something descriptive. So if we're basing it off of services, we're going to name it whatever that service is. Since we're basing this off of locations, I'm going to start here and I'm just going to go with Boston. Now, what we always do for any campaigns that we create with clients, because we're generally working with the accounts that already exist, we just add our initials at the end so that it's easy for us to find what we're actually, what's ours. For budget, right now we're just going to set this for 1. And that's because once we import all this data back into Google Ads itself, then we'll apply the shared budget that we created. We can't apply the shared budget within the Google Ads Editor. And everything change that you make in here is not actually being done on your ad account right now. What we've done is we've downloaded your ad account, or you've downloaded your own ad account, and then once we're done, we can post it or basically send all the changes that we've made and push it into the actual account. So if we wanted to, we could make various changes, we could close this out and come back to it later without any changes happening to the actual account itself. So here on the campaign again, we set our budget to 1. We're going to go down to our bid strategy. We're going to make sure that this is manual cost per click, and we're going to keep enhanced cost per click off. Out of every bid strategy, manual cost per click, it gives you the most control, and that's what we're really looking for when we're managing ad accounts, is to be able to have the most control over how things show up, what you're spending on ads, and so forth. If you are not interested in a manual cost per click, then I would recommend turning enhanced cost per click on. The various other bid strategies such as maximize clicks, worst performing bid strategy you could use, maximize conversions, or target ROAS. You're going to need a good amount of data within your ad account before being able to actually use those types of bid strategies. And even if you can use those types of bid strategies, if your account is already alive and you do have conversion data, you're going to want to test that against manual cost per click, because more often than not, you'll find that manual cost per click, you can get better results with a lower cost per click and a lower cost per lead as compared to the other bid strategies. So campaign type, search, include search partners. That's going to be enabled. You can disable if you want, but the search partners, you have much less competition. So we're going to be able to get cheaper cost per clicks. Display network, we're going to disable. For the start date, if you want a start date to be on a specific date, you can enter that in. I'm going to put mine to October 1st because that's when I want the campaign to start. If you want it to end a certain day, you can put that in there, but I want it to run indefinitely, so I'm going to keep that on. I'm going to scroll down here. My ad rotation, I'm going to set to do not optimize. That's because Google tends to choose which ad is best performing before there is statistically significant data for Google to do so. So we want to have Google not optimize our ad rotation. We're going to be running our own tests with our ads, and we're going to determine what ad is statistically outperforming other ads that we may have created. For our delivery method, we're going to keep this on standard. It doesn't really matter because we're going to apply to our shared budget and it's going to follow that, but also accelerated delivery is going away. Down here where we have our language targeting, it's just set to English. I'm going to choose all languages. Now, this does not mean that we're actually targeting all languages. This means that we're able to target every device regardless of its language. If all of our keywords are selected in English, then we're only going to appear when people search for things in English because the keywords are in English and those words need to be typed into Google in order for our ads to be shown. So what setting language targeting to all does is allows us to show up when somebody's device settings are set to another language. So if, let's say, somebody their first language might be Spanish, so their device settings may be set to Spanish, but if they Google something in English, you'll still be able to have your ads shown to those people, where if you just had language targeting set to English, your ads would not be eligible to show to those people. Next, we're going to come down here, target method. Now, depending on your situation, it's going to depend on how you want this to be. Most often than not, you're going to want people in or regularly in your target location. By default, it's people in or who show interest in your location, meaning that if you want your ads to show up in Massachusetts, as we are doing here, but someone in Florida searches for mobile bartender Mass, they'd be able to see our ad, even though they aren't within our service area. Now, for this example, we might think, well, if someone could be planning an event in Mass, then they're based in Florida, so they're searching for a bartender for a wedding that's going to be in Boston, or vice versa, whatever it may be. And yes, that is very much so true. But for now, we're just going to keep it simple, people in or regularly in our target locations. Because if we did want to target people that were looking for a mobile bartender in a location that they are not currently in, we want to create a different campaign and just target the people that are searching for services within that location that are not currently in that location, because it's going to be much cheaper for us to get those clicks. So people in or regularly in that location. For our exclusion method, we want people who are in our excluded locations. We're going to determine our targets for our campaigns. So I'm going to double click on this campaign. So now I am within that campaign. And now that I'm in the campaign, I'm going to go to keywords and targeting, and I'm going to go to locations. Now we already have by default the location as the United States, and we don't want to target the entire US with this ad. So I'm just going to go ahead and edit this, and I'm going to type in Boston and click find location. So we're going to look here. I want to make sure Boston, the entire city. We don't want to target, for example, like the airport. So that looks good. Okay. And that is the only location we need to add. If we wanted to add a radius to that location, we could. So if you wanted to, let's say, target Boston plus 20-mile radius around Boston, you could add that in right here. Now, if there are any negative locations that we need, we can go down here to locations negative and just do the same thing, add negative location. But for right now, what we're doing, because we have our location set to just people in that area, right now we're not going to worry about setting up a negative location. Now let's set up our ad groups. So within the campaign that we're already in, we're going to go over to ad groups in the bottom left. We're going to create a new ad group. Now we're going to grab our list of keywords. I'm just going to start from the top and work my way down. So the first one I'm going to grab is just wedding bartender. I'm going to name the ad group just exactly whatever the keyword is. Now I'm going to go over to my max cost per click. Now you may be thinking, what should your max cost per click be? You can look at Google Keyword Planner and see an estimate for what your cost per clicks are going to be. But even if Google's Keyword Planner says that the average cost per click for a certain keyword is, let's say, $10, that doesn't mean that you can't show up and be eligible with a $3 or $5 cost per click, or even show up above the people who are paying $10 based on how Google uses its ad rank. So when it comes to cost per click, it doesn't really matter what you set, because you're going to want to constantly be tweaking it based on the data that you have, based on the tests that you're running to find the best cost per click. And your goal should always be to get the lowest possible cost per click while still getting the volume of the leads you want within the cost per lead that you're going after. So you can just put in a random number here and then just let Google kind of do its thing. And then if your ads are too low to be able to be shown, you can increase your cost per click, or if you're paying too much per lead based on what your cost per click is, then you can lower your cost per click. For me, what I did was I looked at what is the most I'm able to pay per lead. What is the most I'm able to have an ad spend per lead where I break even, where I don't make any money and I don't lose any money. And that would be $70. So then I thought, okay, so based on that, what can I guess that my landing page will convert at? And if we're sending traffic to a landing page that just by default is just a landing page, hasn't been tested against anything else before, I would say about 10%. If you're sending traffic to the general website, like the homepage of your website, probably 5 to 8%. So I'm going to go with 10%. I think that's a healthy conversion rate, and that's very achievable. So that would mean at most I can pay $7 per click to break even, because 10% of 70 is $7. So 10 clicks at $7 is $70. 10 clicks, one lead, and the maximum I'm able to pay per lead is $70. So that would be a break-even cost per click. And some people start at a break-even cost per click and then work their way down. Now what I did was I decided to just cut that right in half. So if I were to essentially double my money based on a 10% conversion rate, now of course if I got a higher conversion rate, I'd have a higher ROI. Then I'd be able to, with a 2x ROI, pay $3.50 per click. So that's just where I'm going to start. Could be too high, could be too low depending on the keyword, but we're going to make these adjustments while we're actually managing the ad account as time goes on. Now, another thing to keep in mind with your cost per click is your cost per click in relation to your budget. Now, when it comes to your ad budget, in my experience, you generally want to have enough budget set aside for your cost per clicks to get 5 clicks per day. That's going to give you enough data in your account to actually run tests and make changes. And it's also going to, in more cases than not, prevent you from having your ads be limited by budget. When your ads are limited by budget, they show up way less often than they should. And your ability to get out of limited by budget is either to decrease your cost per clicks or increase your budget. So we originally set our shared budget to be $16.50 per day. So I'm just going to do 3.5 times 5, and that's 17.5, so a little under 5 clicks a day on average, but it should be good enough as it is. If I need to increase my ad spend, I can do that. And this could be a too high of cost per click. I may be able to drop that down to 3, which would make it perfect for what my daily budget is. So that's the two things I would look at is what can we pay, what's the maximum cost per click that we can pay. You don't want to go too low. You don't want to say, hey, I want to get a 5x return. While it's definitely achievable with Google Ads, you don't want to start out guns blazing, because you may need to have months of data and months of operating your ad account to be able to get your cost per clicks and your conversion rates high enough to be able to get a 5x return. The other side of things is just make sure that you have a low enough cost per click that you're able to get about at least 5 clicks a day to your ad account. So with our cost per click chosen, we're then going to go from being inside the campaign to inside the ad group. So we're just going to double click on the ad group name. And now we can see on the left-hand side, because it is highlighted, we are within the ad group. Now we're going to go down to keywords. And I'm just going to add a keyword. I'm going to add a total of 3 keywords. And we're going to add the same keyword 3 times. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go to one of these. We're going to change it from broad to phrase. We're going to another, change it from broad to exact. And we're going to go to the last one, which is a broad match. And we're just going to put a plus symbol next to each word. And what this is going to do is this is going to make a modified broad match, which means that all of the words within our keyword have to appear just within any order. Now you could run a single keyword ad group just having your modified broad match, because the modified broad match will trigger the same search terms as the phrase and exact. But what having these variations does is it allows you to have more control over your cost per click. So you might find that certain keywords generate a lot more low quality search terms, or maybe certain ones are going to be more competitive. So more often than not, your phrase match for your keywords are going to be the most competitive one you're going after. So this is going to be the highest average cost per click for your keyword. So maybe this is a little bit too competitive, and so for exact match, maybe your max cost per click goes down to $3, but for your phrase and your modified broad match, maybe $3.50 is fine. Maybe you get a lot of junk keyword searches with your broad match, so maybe you want to drop your cost per click for there, so you're not paying as much for your modified broad match terms. Now, for some industries, you may notice that you're getting really bad clicks for modified broad match throughout, and maybe you need to turn most of these off while keeping the other ones on. So for all intents and purposes, what this does is just gives us a lot more control over what we are not showing up for. Now, if you're more familiar with Google Ads, you can be a little bit more creative with which actual terms within your modified broad match you actually add the plus modifier to it. But for the sake of this example, we're just going to add the plus symbol after every word within our keyword. So now we have our keywords. While staying within the ad group, we're going to go to our ads. And we're going to go to an expanded text ad. So now we're going to create a new ad. So when it comes to our ad copy, I wouldn't go too crazy with this in terms of how meticulous you have to be with what you choose, because you want to constantly be testing ad variations, and you're going to want to know if the ad you're running right now, is this the best ad you can possibly run, or is there something that's going to beat it out? And you're going to know that by running multiple ads for each ad group. So like I said, it doesn't really matter what you put in here, which I'll go over some ideas for where you want to put things and how you want to accurately test things, but I wouldn't go too crazy with what is the exact verbiage you have to use, because like I said, you're going to be testing it and you're going to try to find something that's performing better than what you come up with right now. So for our headline 1, the first thing we want to do is have the keyword there, which is wedding bartender. I'm just going to camel case it, or basically make sure the first letter of each word is capitalized. So we have up to 30 characters eligible for each headline, and because we've only used 17, in this case, I'm going to try to think of something else that we can put at the end of headline 1. Now, we don't want to go anything too extravagant, because we're going to be split testing headline 2 across our ad groups, across our ads, sorry. So I'm just going to go with wedding bartender for hire. Now, headline 2 is where we're going to get creative. If possible, we're going to add in some sort of call to action, some sort of number that's going to stand out. People are going to be reading the headline more so than anything else. So I paused the video so I could come up with a couple of headline 2 ideas here. And ideally for headline 2, what we want to have is something with numbers, something that stands out, something that's going to entice somebody to click. Now, I couldn't think of any numbers off the top of my head, but I did come up with these. Award-winning bartender, which for the company that this PPL site is working with, that's 100% true. It is owned by an award-winning bartender, fully licensed and insured. Again, that is true. And call now to book. Now, these are all things that someone might like. Now, I tried putting in a specific award that the person had won in like the year, because the number would stand out, but it wouldn't fit within the 30 characters, and I couldn't change it around to get it to fit due to having to have the name of the award in there. So these are the best that I came up with right now, but again, it doesn't really matter because we're going to be testing these. Now, of the two that I want to test is going to be award-winning bartender and call now to book, because in my mind, fully licensed and insured, that should be kind of a given for anybody. Really, they shouldn't be operating. They wouldn't legally be operating if they weren't fully licensed and didn't have all the insurances that they needed to. So right now I'm going to be split testing award-winning bartender versus call now to book. And we're going to be seeing what kind of difference there's going to be as we run the ad account. So I'm going to grab this award-winning bartender. I'm going to add it in here. Now, with the split testing that I'm going to be doing, is it's not going to be just against one ad group, but it's going to be against multiple ad groups, so an account-wide based test. So what that means is that all of our second headlines, or one of our variations for our second headlines in all of our ad groups, is going to be award-winning bartender. What this does is this allows us to not just see for this one particular ad group, does this headline work better, but once we have way more data across, let's say the 20, 30 or so ad groups that we're going to have, does this more often than not beat out other types of ad groups? And we may find that maybe for all of our wedding related terms, maybe call now to book works better than award winning, or maybe award winning works better for weddings, because maybe they're looking for as high end as possible because a wedding's a big event, or maybe for a general party, maybe call now to book works better. So we're going to be able to figure that out by having this test run across all of our different ad groups. Now for headline 3, we're not going to add that for now. Headline 3 doesn't always appear with the ads, and it's going to make it more complex to test if some cases, because it's going to be another variable. Sometimes headline 3 is there, sometimes headline 3 is not. So even if we had headline 3 the same throughout every single ad, we would have different differentiating data. So for right now, we're just going to keep headline 3 as blank. Now we need to add a description in. Now we want, again, the description, we ideally want to add in numbers because it's going to catch the eye a little bit more, and we want it to be conversion focused. Those things going to increase the click-through rate of the ad. So for this, we also need to make sure it's going to work for all of our for all of our ad groups that we're going to be running the same test against, because we don't want to have more than one variable difference, in which case the only variable that we're changing right now is headline 2. Headline 1, we might not be able to have 4 higher in each headline, which is why I didn't go anything super special for the extra kind of space that was in headline 1. But the description, it needs to work for all of our different ads. So now I'm going to pause the video, come up with a description or two, and then come back to it after. So for our descriptions, we have both description line 1 and 2, and we want to utilize both description lines. So since I couldn't get the award mentioned in the headline without kind of exceeding our text limit, I decided to add it to our description. So 2018 Metro West Cocktail Champion, which is 100% true. This business does have that award. So I'm going to put that there. We have up to 90 characters, I believe. We only used about half of them there, but I felt as though for now this is fine as a description. Now for description 2, mentioning a little bit what they do. We can whip up anything from a perfectly balanced whiskey sour to an exotic drink. And let me just end that with a call now. Call now exceeds it. So, well, with the exclamation point, it exceeds it. Would prefer to be able to have that exclamation point there so it stands out a little bit more. Let me change anything to drinks. We can mix up drinks from a perfectly balanced. Okay, so that should be fine. 2018 Metro West Champion. We can whip up drinks from a perfectly balanced whiskey sour to an exotic drink. Now having drink in there twice doesn't look as good. But I'm going to leave it for now. Like I said, I'm not going to overthink this too much because not many people are going to fully read the descriptions. Headline is really what's going to make the biggest difference. So while it doesn't read as perfectly as I'd like it, it's good enough for now. So we'll add that in there. Now we have our path, and we want our path to be the keyword. So wedding, and then bartender, which is probably going to exceed our 15 character limit. Yep. So what we're going to do is, instead of having it on one path, we're going to split it into 2 paths. So now we have wedding, bartender, just getting more keywords into the ad. People are going to ignore what we put there anyways, so you don't have to really worry about that. Now I'm going to add in the landing page to the final URL. So this is where people are actually going to land on for the ad. So now that we have our first ad completely created, what we're going to do is we're now going to duplicate our ad. So we're just going to come over here, copy and paste, just Control C, Control V. And with this variation of our ad, just going to go in here and change headline 2. So we're keeping everything the same, just changing headline 2 around. So now we have created our first single keyword ad group, and now we're going to create all of our other SKAGs, and this is the main reason why we're in the Google Ads editor, because this is where it gets much faster to be able to duplicate everything.